NFL Survivor Pools, it's week 14. Guys, you've made it to the most in-depth video on Survivor Pools. Strap yourself in. We've got a lot of math this week on Scratching and Surviving. All right, guys, week 14. Can't believe you are still alive because it is getting really, really difficult. We lost over 50% of the remaining entries in pools last week. Jacksonville goes down, Pittsburgh goes down. Those two, they accounted for most of the losses in pools. Now, I was lucky enough that I did not have Jacksonville available to me, nor did I have Pittsburgh available to me, so I avoided both of those teams. I'm in double pick mode. I think it's been about the last 4 or 5 weeks, double picks in the pool that I'm in. We started with over 8,000 down to 15 now. I was on Tampa and the Rams. Those were the two best options I had available. So it's really a matter of luck a lot of the times at this point in your pool. But we could talk about some math. When you're doing the double picks, that one is going to keep me up all night trying to figure out the math behind where we need to go with our picks next week. But for you guys, the more information we gather, the more information we have, the easier it is to make the determination on what the most optimal pick is going to be for you and your pool. So as we get closer to week 18, that eliminates some variables, as in how many weeks are left. As we eliminate people from your pool, that eliminates some variables, as in the amount of people left in your pool. And of course, as we eliminate teams that you could potentially take, that eliminates some variables. So the less amount of variables that we have, the greater the chances we have of making the most optimal play. So we're getting to that point with a lot of you, most of you in your pools, where you don't have too many left in the pool. Obviously, we're all at the same point in the season here in week 14, and we can make better determinations where to hedge, maybe take a team that others are not on. We'll talk about all of that in detail here this week, and I want to go over some math. I'm going to try not to confuse you guys too much with the math, but I want to go over a couple of things mathematically and how you should be looking at the pools. First, of course, as always, Sharp app. There we go, like right there. I don't know why I can't do this. Like, oh, there you go. Like, I'm not really good at mirroring, but there it is. Sharp app, QR code. Download it. The prop tool has now added in, we've got something called the Proptimizer. If you play props, if you're on Prize Picks, if you're on Sleeper, or any sports book that offers props in the NBA, in NHL, in NFL, you're going to want to check out the Proptimizer tool that we have over at the Sharp app. I built this tool, so I'm a little bit biased, but it's one of the best tools in the industry for beating props. If you are not currently subscribed to, you don't have an account over at Sleeper or at Prize Picks, and you want to get the Sharp app for free, open up an account over at either one or both using the code SHARP. If you use the code SHARP when you sign up, and I'll have a link in the description below, so you can just click that link and then sign up. If you use that code and then head over to our Discord, there's links down below. Send me a screenshot that you did it and download the Sharp app. I'm going to hook you guys up with a couple of free months to the Sharp app. So if you want the Sharp app for free, all you got to do is sign up to Sleeper or Prize Picks, and we've got a tool that's going to help you win some money on there. So it could wind up just being profitable for you, and you're going to have access to the Sharp app, which has a whole lot of other stuff on it besides just the Proptimizers. So hit me up with that. And if you don't want to sign up for Sleeper or Prize Picks and you just want the Sharp app, use code SURVIVOR. That's going to get you 20% off of the Sharp App Pro membership. Going to get you access to our Discord VIP rooms, as well as all of the tools available at the Sharp app. So check that out. We really appreciate it, and it helps keep videos like this coming out for you guys. All right, this week, I want to dive in. The Survivor sheet, we could kind of throw it out the window. My spreadsheet that I look at, it's pretty much done. It doesn't have as much use as we get to this point in the season. So I just want to look at Survivor Grid first. So let's see what we've got on the docket here for this week. You look at the biggest favorite of the week, it's Miami. Again, we talked about Miami last week. Odds are pretty good. You've used Miami to this point. That's why only 3%. I'm actually shocked 3% of pools are actually able to take Miami at this point, as I am shocked that 3% of entrants in pools can still take San Francisco. If you happen to be one of those participants who can take Miami or San Francisco, you don't really need to watch this video. You're probably pretty deep into your pool. There's not many people left. you would be crazy not to take one of these teams. You can see the EV level here, 1.34, 1.29. That just shows the amount of people on a team relative to their win percentage. Obviously, both of these teams double-digit favorites. High likelihood that they win. You have a huge leverage spot over the pool that you are in because most people are going to be on these other teams that we're going to get to in a moment. So not a whole lot of thinking if I had either Miami or San Francisco. I'm going for it. Good chance you could take your pool down this week. So now let's get into the teams that you more than likely have available to you. Baltimore, maybe not as many people, which is why there's only 11.6% right now, as they are the third best choice as far as in win percentage in the betting market. They have the third most likely chance of winning, but only 11.6%. So again, if you have Baltimore, I think this would be an option to take them, especially since you can look at the other people in your pool. Most likely you would be the only one on Baltimore, so it makes this pick even stronger. Now, Green Bay on the road Monday night. This is the most popular team being taken right now at 20%. They're on the road at the Giants. This says 6.5-point favorites. I believe that is what they are. I just looked over on the Sharp app. 6.5-point favorite. I actually, when I do the calculation, I use the Sharp app and I take the midpoint of the money line. That's how I come up with the win percentage. And when I did it earlier, it was about 73.6%. So actually a little bit higher than they're showing here on Survivor Grid. Now, I want to bring it back here to me for a second. A lot of you worry about road teams. And I've said this before in other videos. I just ran the numbers before. In the last 20 seasons, so the last 20 years, I looked at teams favored between 6 and 8 points. I looked at them on the road, and I looked at them as a favorite. And the road teams of a 6 to 8 point favorite have actually won at a higher percentage. They've won over 75% of the games on the road, and the home team, who's been favored by 6 to 8 points, has won closer to 72% of the time. Now, there's a lot of games that this encompasses, but really what I want to get across is the fact that being a road team or being a home team is really inconsequential. The same thing holds true for divisional matchups. I know a lot of people put weight in that, and because they do, we can actually take advantage of that. So let other people take teams that aren't as big a favorite because they're at home. We'll take the larger favorites in the situations that we can. On the road, it's going to happen 1 out of every 4 times, or 3 to 1, right? So one time, I guess it's 1 out of every 4 times. 1 out of every 4 games, you're going to lose with that road team as a 6 to 8 point favorite. All right, it's going to be a little lower because we're on that 6.5. We're encompassing 8s, 7.5s, and 8s in that data that I looked at. But just understand there's no real big difference between a road team that's favored by a touchdown or a home team that's favored by a touchdown. I want to get that across to you. And I know you're going to take Green Bay this week. They're going to lose, and you're going to say, see, I told you I don't like taking road teams. But you're going to have to trust me on this. The data backs it up. I don't really care whether teams are on the road or at home. The point spread is all I look at. And when you watch these other Survivor videos and they start breaking down the quarterbacks and the left tackle, and there's going to be the middle linebacker for this team has a hangnail on his toe. I mean, none of that matters. It's all built into the point spread. So you could watch all these other videos. You could try to handicap it. You're not smarter than the market on the whole. The wisdom of the crowd is the ultimate. That is the smartest of all of us. So we look to the wisdom of the crowd, which is all the liquidity that's in the NFL market. Everyone has all that information. Now, unless you have information on a quarterback that may be hurt, that nobody else has, your cousin is dating that quarterback and nobody else knows that he's got an injury to his throwing wrist. Okay, that would be some information that's going to change the point spread, and you have information that the rest of the market does not. But everyone else has the information. Everyone else has weather information. They've got injury information. They've got all the information. That's all built into the point spread. So again, focus on the point spread. That's what we're looking at each and every week. Don't worry about divisional games. Don't worry about road games. Back to the Survivor Grid. We look at Green Bay on the road at the Giants, right? Houston, the next best team, at the Jets. They're playing in the same stadium. Coincidentally, these are going to be the 2 most taken teams this week because a lot of people do have them available to us. In my pool, I'm going to be on Green Bay with one of my picks, and I believe I'm going to have to take New Orleans right now. That's what we're looking at. I've got two. I mean, not going to be in a better situation at this point in the season taking two teams than to have two teams that are going to be favored by 5 points or more. Certainly, no, it's not a lock that we win these games. Actually, when you do the math, it's sub 50% that we actually win both of these games. So we look at Green Bay on the road, Houston, and then Pittsburgh and New Orleans are going to be in that 10 to 15% taken range for pools across the industry. Now, when we look at Pitt, now if you have Pitt available to you, a lot of people have taken Pitt. So you may say, well, I've got Pitt at home. Again, I don't really care about at home, but Pitt might be a good option when you look at the other people in your pool. This is going to be critical now. You're getting down to the nitty-gritty in your pool. You need to gather all the information you can. What can others take? So I ran some numbers because I do an article on this, okay? So I ran some numbers based on if you knew everyone in your pool. Let's say you had Houston and Green Bay as two options for you, and you knew everybody in your pool was going to take Green Bay, and let's say you were down to 4 people left in your pool, right? And you knew the other 3 were going to take Green Bay. Who should you take? Now, logic would just tell you you should probably take Houston because that's going to give you a chance to take the entire pool down, right, with in 1 week. And you're taking a team that's not too far away, a favorite from Green Bay. And you would be 100% correct in that thinking. But I wanted to just go over some of the math behind that with you guys. The way to figure this out is to do an EV calculation. That's an expected value calculation. I don't want to get too in detail on that. I do have videos on the Sharp app on this channel. We've got a Sharp Academy. You could just download the app and go to Academy. These are all free videos. And if you want to learn about sports betting, I've got a video on EV, but it's going to really help us in this scenario as well. So to do this, we have to look at all of the possible scenarios that are going to happen. So in my hypothetical, I read an article on Survivor every Wednesday morning, and then I do this video. And in that article, I kind of detail it. I'll put down below in the description some of the calculations here so you guys can see it and follow along with me in the description. But when we look at, I'm going to bring it up here so I can look at and refresh my memory on the calculation. But what I did was I said, let's hypothetically, we've got a $10,000 pot and we've got 4 people left in the pot. We're one of those people. We have $2,500 in equity, okay? Now, what are the possible outcomes? We're saying in this case that we have Houston and Green Bay as 2 potential teams that we could take. It could be Pittsburgh for you. It could be New Orleans. It could be one of these other teams, right? But we're going to just go with Houston and Green Bay for this hypothetical, and we're going to assume that we know all 3 of our opponents are going to be on Green Bay. Now, why would we take Green Bay when we know all 3 of our opponents are going to be on Green Bay? We just wouldn't. But to do this mathematically, let's look at all the outcomes. If Houston and Green Bay win, that's one outcome. Houston, Green Bay winner. Houston loses, Green Bay wins. That's another outcome. Houston wins with a Green Bay loss. That's another one. And then both Houston and Green Bay could lose. All right. And again, you could substitute Houston with any of these other teams. It's just going to change the math based on the win probabilities. But then I figure out what is the probability of the outcome number 1 happening. Houston winning and Green Bay winning. You simply multiply both of their win percentages to figure out what's the probability both of these teams win. I have 69% win probability for Houston with a 73.6% win probability for Green Bay. Based on the Sharp app, I take the midpoint of the odds of the money line, and then I figure out the implied odds. Again, go to the Sharp Academy videos. I've got videos on how to figure out implied probability, money lines, and things like that if you're unfamiliar, or just ask me down in the comments. But that gives you 50.8% chance that both of those happen. So it's about a coin flip that if you take Houston and Green Bay, is on the other 3 people in your pool take Green Bay, there's a 50% chance that you're both going to win that bet. Now, Houston losing and Green Bay winning, there's a 22.8% chance that happens, and that's the worst case scenario for you because you're going to be out of the pool. The other 3 are going to advance. You figure that out by taking what's the odds of Houston losing. Well, if they have a 69% chance of winning, they have a 31% chance of losing. You multiply that by the Green Bay's probability of winning. That's 73.6%. Gives you 22.8%. What's the probability, best case scenario, that you win and Green Bay loses? Well, that's 69% win probability of Houston, 26.4 win probability of the loss of Green Bay, because you're going to subtract 100% by 73.6%, and that gives you 26.4%. You multiply 26.4 by 69, gives you 18.2%. And then the probability that both lose, 0.31 times 0.264, or 31% times 26.4%, gives you 8.2%. When you add those all up, they should equal 100%. I didn't account for ties. It's just such a small percentage. It's not going to change our calculation all that much. And there's a probability, or there's a good chance in your pool, ties are going to advance for everyone. But figuring out the ties is going to be a nightmare. This is already difficult enough. All right, so we could do after that we do an expected value calculation, and to do that, again, you could follow my expected value video, or again look down in the description. But since we have 2,500 in equity, if both teams win, we're going to maintain our 2,500 in equity. So we're going to multiply 2,500 by 50.8%. Scenario 2, we're going to lose, let's say it was $100 to get into the pool. If Houston loses, Green Bay wins, we're going to lose our $100. So we're going to be minus 100 22.8% of the time. In scenario 3, we win the entire pool. There's an 18.2% chance that we're going to win $10,000. Scenario 4, we both lose, and then our equity is still 2,500, because both of us are going to lose. Either we're going to all advance to next week, or we chop the pot 2,500 each, depending on the rules in your pool. There's an 8.2% chance that we get 2,500, right? So what you do is you multiply the percentages by what each scenario's payout or expense is going to be, right? So in scenario 1, we're going to have 2,500 in equity. We multiply that by 50.8%. We subtract out the $100 that we're going to lose 22.8% of the time. We add in the 10,000 that we're going to win 18.2% of the time. And then we add in the 2,500 that we're going to win 8.2% of the time in scenario 4. That gives you, when you add all those numbers up, $3,272.20 of EV. Now, you don't need to do a real difficult calculation to figure out if you took Green Bay and everyone else takes Green Bay, we're not changing our EV. We're going to have 2,500 in equity, right? So 3272.2 greater than 2,500. Therefore, the situation you want to put yourself in is to take Houston and get off of what everyone else is taking. That should be intuitive, but I want to put the numbers to it. Now, you can now figure out it's an even more difficult calculation, but we'd want to figure out at what percentage would it be possible for us to break even. In other words, if we knew all of our opponents were on Green Bay, what is the weakest team that we could possibly take in order to be profitable, or at least break even? So I did that math for you. I'll put it down in the description, but you basically have to solve for X. It's the old algebra scenario there, but we're going to basically take out the probability, because that we don't know what the probability of this team is. We're trying to solve for that, and we want to basically just do that EV calculation and then substitute everywhere where we had a calculation for what Houston's odds are, because we know what Houston's odds are. We just substitute X. And then for them losing, it would be 1 minus X. And then we do the entire calculation and say, when would that equal 2,500? Because when do those things become equal? And it turns out it's 49.75%. So that with that knowledge, what it's saying is, if you're in a situation where you know all three of your opponents are on one team, you can take any favorite and actually put yourself in an advantageous situation. Now, again, it's going to matter with what you have next week. So let's say you were in a situation where nobody could take any of these teams. Let's bring up Survivor Grid, and let's just say you can all take Green Bay this week, and then you don't have the ability to take, let's say, Houston or Pittsburgh or New Orleans, and you're kind of in a situation where, let's say Minnesota is your best option, or the Chargers, or Kansas City or Atlanta. Let's say Atlanta is a team that you may likely have in this situation, right? At -2.5, not a great situation. Now, I didn't run the calculation as far as what they were, but let's say their win percentage is somewhere around 55-56%. If you knew everyone was on Green Bay, it's actually a good idea to be on Atlanta, even though the probability is that your opponents are in a better situation in that game. You've got equity you've got a greater expected value by taking the weaker team in that scenario. Now, makes this what makes this play more profitable is the more people you're playing against who have the that same team. So if you've got 5 people against you all taking the same team, or 6 or 7, then you can actually wind up taking an underdog and putting yourself in an advantageous situation. Now, you don't know this going in. No one's going to tell you exactly who they're taking, but sometimes you're in a situation where you've got friends against you, or you kind of know, you could just deduce by who they have left. There's a science and there's an art to it, but you can just use this knowledge to let you know that there's an advantage to maybe taking a lesser team if you can get all or most of the opponents on one team. That may not be the situation here this week. Now, the other thing you're going to need to look at when you are doing this kind of a calculation or determining what you can take is, what can I do this again next week, or am I in a better spot to do this next week? So let's go back to our situation where we've got four people left. We're one of them, and Green Bay is going to be taken by the 3 opponents. Now, do we want to all be on Green Bay, or do we take Houston, right? So in this situation, because they're so close, Houston's going to be an obvious choice here. But as we start going down to, let's say, in Atlanta, is it worth me taking Atlanta here as a 2.5-point favorite, or now I have to look to next week? And what do all my opponents have next week? Now, if I knew next week that my opponents are all going to have to take a pretty weak team, which they probably are, let's say no one's got the Rams left and the Chargers, no one has, let's say it's getting to the point where maybe they've only got Cleveland and Atlanta right next week, in which we're both going to be in a situation where we have to take, where my getting off of where everyone else is going to be on gives me a team that's very similar to the team that they're taking, then maybe I don't want to go too crazy here this week and taking a team like Atlanta against Green Bay, right? So it's going to really be a determination that you have to make on what's the pool look like for next week and maybe even the week after that. But I just want to throw that and put that in your head, that sometimes here, depending on the amount of opponents and depending on where you think your opponents are going to go, sometimes it is advantageous to get on a weaker team because the math behind it says that you can do that. Now, the one thing I didn't mention about Green Bay, they play on Monday night. So that is going to entice even more people to play Green Bay because you have a hedge possibility. It's something that you need to look at as well. If you have the chance to hedge, you may want to just take Green Bay and put that hedge on. It was a possibility last week with Jacksonville. They wound up losing. If you took Jacksonville last week and put a hedge on, at least you made yourself some money back with that hedge. And I always like hedging against the spread because I could catch that middle, right? So that's another thing that you need to look at, the hedging possibility. I always like having that Monday night play or the Sunday night play where I'm going to have more information. I'm going to know if my opponents get knocked out or not. I'll know exactly where I stand, at least better than almost everyone else in the pool, because I am going to have the last game on the card, the last game on the slate, and I'm going to be able to make a much more accurate hedge bet than I would have if I had to bet a hedge on the 1 o'clock games. If I took New Orleans, let's say this weekend, and I had to take them at 1 o'clock, my hedge bet is not going to be as good as taking Green Bay. So that's just another thing that you have to factor in. All these things need to be taken into account when you are looking at your pool individually. And of course, if you leave a comment down below, I'll be able to help walk you and guide you through your pool. Now let's just talk quickly if you are heads up. I talked about the more people in your pool that are on the same team, the better it is, the more equity you're going to have by getting on a different team, and taking a team of a lower favorite level like in Atlanta becomes more advantageous with the more people that you have on that larger favorite team. But the inverse is true. When you start to limit the amount of people in the pool all the way down to, let's say, where it's heads up, now you just want to play optimally when it's heads up against an opponent. So by optimally, I mean you're going to want to take Green Bay this week, even if your opponent takes Green Bay, because that's the best team. Like, even taking Houston as opposed to taking Green Bay is not going to be the best move for you because Houston has a less likelihood of winning. Now, let's assume this was Sunday and we had the numbers as of, the lines can change. this Green Bay line may come down, the Houston line goes up, and then this flips, and then Houston becomes a better play in your heads-up situation. But in a heads-up situation, I really want to try to make the most optimal play I possibly can. Let my opponent be cute and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pass on Green Bay this week, and I'm going to take Pittsburgh. All right? Let him take the team with the lesser chance, or he's going to take New Orleans. Let them do that. You're going to stick with the highest likelihood of winning. We don't know for sure. Obviously, it doesn't guarantee us anything, but we have a little bit of an edge here by taking the highest chance of a team winning. It doesn't guarantee that we're going to win our pool. Now, the only time you're going to want to get off the optimal is when you're looking, let's say we want to look the next 2 weeks out and take the optimal. So if Green Bay were a team that we want to save for next week for some reason, right? They're at home against Tampa, and we look at our other options, and they're going to be the best option. You have to kind of weigh that in. So what I like to do is just multiply what's my win percentage of Green Bay this week and then Green Bay next week, try to figure out what the probability or that win percentage is going to be of them. You multiply the two, that's going to give you the win percentage that you get through. Actually, you wouldn't do with Green Bay. You'd pick what's the other team that I'm going to take this week instead. Maybe it's New Orleans. So my New Orleans, multiply the probability that they win by Green Bay next week. That's going to give me the probability that I win the next 2 weeks. And what's my other scenario? Well, Green Bay this week, and maybe the other option is Indianapolis next week. I multiply the win probability of Green Bay this week by what I think the win probability of Indianapolis next week. And then I compare that to my first scenario, and whichever is higher, that's the more optimal play. Again, it's not always going to be accurate. Injuries are going to happen. We don't know. But we want to try to take the most optimal path and scenario when we are looking at a head-to-head situation. So the more people left in your pool and the more that are on the same team, that's when we want to start looking to other options. It's going to be the more optimal play for you guys. Leave comments down below. I'm going to leave a lot of this math down below as well so you can follow along. The video went a little longer than usual. I apologize for that, but I wanted to get all that information out to you guys. Best of luck this week. We are getting down to the nitty-gritty. Let's all take our pools home. Let's cash that money.